Hey billionaires, today we're talking about, is leadership really influence? Or better question, is influence actually leadership? And kind of opening the floor for a first in the series on leadership. I am Emily Montiel.
And I'm Ali Davar, and you're listening to Billion and Better.
Hey. Hey. I still feel a little bit wired. I just did the live webinar, and that was like not my thing doing live, so I'm still a little bit like wired from that. I was laughing this morning because hopefully this resonates with you. I don't know if you weren't here in 2000. We were working with our executive assistant on a project the last week or so because, by the way, good job on all those trainings that you recorded for our team. Like, that was awesome. I never got to see most of them, but I did now. So we were offloading those from like an outdated cloud platform that's going away. And the end date that the platform told me was today. So last night we were working on it, and I felt like I was like racing against the clock to get all of these recordings off so we didn't lose them. And I was texting her, and I was like, I feel like it's Y2K. Like, the moment that the clock hits midnight, like, something bad's gonna happen. And I don't know if you remember, I know in the United States, like, everybody was going crazy that, like, when midnight rolled around from 1999 to 2000, that like all the computers were going to crash and stuff because the year 00 was set as like a default start, and so it wouldn't know how to read it. So I remembered on like New Year's Eve of 1999, like standing around with my mom, like waiting for something to happen at midnight, and it didn't. So I thought it was funny because I was like racing the midnight clock, and she texted me this morning. She was like, I had no idea what you were talking about. She said, I'm going to date myself. I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, date yourself? You're dating me. The fact that, like, I remembered it so vividly. So it was a little humbling, right? Like, that moment. But
well, you know they have computers in other countries too, right? like, why do I have to be here?
I didn't know if the mass...
This was a worldwide thing. You didn't have to be here for that.
I didn't know if the mass hysteria about what's gonna, like the doomsday that was gonna happen when the clock hit midnight on January 1st, 2000 was global, or just like, you know, the wackos in the United States doing that. So
now you know.
I just didn't know if it's like global panic or national panic. Maybe it was just panic in my own little city. I don't know, but I remember it was the Y2K. So I dated myself even further, and I sent her a picture of the inflatable backpack that I wore that year, back when everything was inflatable here in the United States, I guess. And it said 2000 on it, and like where it probably. But anyways, so I heard, I've known this for a while, but it's kind of like come up a lot in my life recently. Like, people say, what is leadership? What is leadership? And I've heard people simplify it down to leadership is influence. And when I first heard that, I was like, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that's influence. People who can influence people are leaders. That makes a lot of sense. Leadership is influence. And here recently, in my own reflecting, I've been second guessing that. Like, is leadership influence? Can it be boiled down to just that one word or that one definition? So it kind of, in my reflecting, I flipped it, right? I said leadership is influence, maybe. Influence is leadership. And that's, I think, the place where I get stuck. I'm like, I don't know if influence is necessarily leadership. What do you think about that initially?
Yeah, so leadership is influence is a John Maxwell thing, right? And he is the expert when it comes to leadership. But there's thousands of different definitions for what leadership is. There's thousands of different books out there, and everybody has their own definition. And there's 1,000 different ways of doing things. But when you really boil down a lot of them, I think that's the simplest explanation that resonates. You can, I've said somebody on our team actually had a definition that was really good too, but I think the simplest one, it really resonates with me, that it is influence, right? Because think about it, whether it's bad influence or good influence, you've had bad leaders or good leaders throughout history, in business, or, Hitler, had influence, and, whether he was whether it was evil or good, it's still leadership, right? He was a good leader. He just used that power for evil.
Okay, that's it. We're done the episode, because he just helped me You just helped me bring it full circle. Here it is. I'm going to sum it up and we're done. The reason that I was like, leadership is influence. I get that. There's a lot of influence that comes from good or bad leadership. Is influence leadership. And the example in my life that I can give, and I think you've probably heard this story, is the worst boss I ever had. The worst boss I ever had. And I tell this story to this day. She was incredibly smart. Like, I used to love to just sit and hear her talk. She did a lot more talking than listening, a lot. But she had a lot of really good things to say. So I remember, like, furiously writing notes and, like, you know, just kind of soaking up all of her wisdom and knowledge. I don't know if you've noticed, I am also a very wordy person. When I get going, like, I can talk a lot. And I remember one time, better stop. Like, we have time, what are you doing? I remember one time we were talking about something and strategizing about something, and, like, I think it was the context in which she delivered it and what she actually said to me, but she literally stopped me midstream and was like, M. See, like, to me, I don't do that. You can call me M. Anybody can call me M. It's totally fine. But when the way she did it was in exercise and control, to, like, say a softer name instead of Emily, because I'm calling you a nickname, but I'm saying it in an abrupt way to stop you. I didn't like that. But she said, M, shut up. Told me to shut up. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I have thick skin. Like, we can duke it out all day. But that was such a disrespectful thing to me. And what she elaborated, and she was like, sometimes you take so long to explain something. And I'm like, I can concede that. I get it. But up until that point, but for her being very intellectual and liking what she had to say, like, she had not built a relationship with me. There was no trust there. There was respect, but not trust. And it felt so icky, right? And she was a leader, right? Like, she was given the title of a leader. And so up until you just helped me have a light bulb moment, I was like, that's not influence. Like, I don't want to be like that. In fact, I use her, this is why you've probably heard the story, as my example of, like, you know, when you're like, who was the best leader you ever had and who was the worst? She was my worst. She made me feel so bad on that day. But I guess, to your point, there can be good leadership and bad leadership. And I guess when I say leadership is not influence, I'm wrong, because she actually did influence me a lot. She influenced me a lot to, like, dig my heels in and say, I never want to make somebody feel like that. Yeah. I never want to make somebody feel like that. Even if I'm trying to coach them on an opportunity, the way she made me feel that day is horrible. So I was wrong. I guess, you know, like, the influence of who you want to be or who you don't want to be.
Yeah. That made me think of something, because also as a leader, you're asking yourself, like, what is my goal, right? I'm trying to move us, the organization, the country, the family, towards something, right? And when you have, like, you know, when you have, sometimes a position is enough to give you authority, right? And it makes you the leader. But sometimes not even the position makes you the leader. Maybe there's somebody on the team that's just very influential. I've experienced that, being the person who has the position, but I have to navigate around people that have the influence, right? Like, I have a team of, for example, 10 people, and I got one person that I know is going to influence 5, and I need to navigate around this person, right? For a leader, valuing the balance between getting the results and maintaining the relationship, or enhancing the relationship over time matter. Meaning, if I am a bad leader who's just gonna, it's my way or the highway, we're gonna do it because I said so, or just shut up, right? That is gonna get you the results short term, but not for so long. You will lose your influence. You will have influence right now. You're the leader today. But over time, when people lose influence, you either lose them, or they're not happy, or productivity goes down, right? So you're looking at the balance of, how do I keep my people, how do I keep the relationships alive? How do I keep the team motivated? At the same time, if you only focus on this side of the equation of, results versus relationships, if I'm just focusing on the relationship, then I don't get anything done. If I don't feel like, having to, coach anybody or talk about anything that wasn't done, or talk about the results when somebody's uncomfortable, people will, like it, but I won't get anything done. On the other side, if I'm just results, or have method micromanaging or have methods that are just going to be effective short term. Long term, I will lose those relationships, and it will cost me more long term because replacing people and training them again, and morale goes down, right? So I feel like one of the most difficult things for a leader that is happening every day in business, that will happen for the day you start as a leader until the day, you're a leader forever, I believe, but forever you're dancing with this balance of how do I get things done and maintain the relationship and enhance the relationship. This is a dance.
It sounds like you're talking about short-term influence because you have the title and it's authoritative, right? Versus long-term influence, like how do I build relationships in a way that I can influence these people for the long term. And I can see that show up in my own life, not to like toot my own horn or anything, but I have people that I was their leader by title years ago. Mm-hmm. And I still keep in touch with these people, and we talk about things, and they ask me professional advice and personal advice even. Like, that's establishing long term. I also look back at like early me, like when I first got the title and I'm a leader, right? Like, I don't really have long-term relationships with those people, like, and that's what it sounds like is the short term and the long term. So going back to like my worst boss ever, because this is the conundrum, if I can concede now that leadership is influence, her influence on me was, I don't want to be like that, but it stuck with me. It's been years. I'm not going to say the years because I don't want to call anybody out, but it's been years, and that influence has still stuck with me. How do you gain influence on people? Like, how did she do that? How did she get into my psyche and still influence me so deeply? Well,
because being your boss, I think there's a level of like, I don't know what the word would be. Like, there's a certain level of I want to have that respect from her. I want her to respect me. I want to have her care, right? There's certain people just by the positions they're put in our lives that we expect certain things, right? So they're just going to have influence by the position, and the rest they have to build, right? Like, we've all had maybe teachers, right? A teacher to a student is an authoritative position of like, okay, they're the leader of that classroom. Now, how many teachers do you remember? I have one teacher that I love, that has influenced my life, that has changed my life, right? She had the position, but her capabilities as a teacher, but most importantly, her care, the relationship side of things, like results is getting the grades, but the relationship she built with me taught me lessons that have stuck with me for my life, and have changed how I actually think through certain things, right? Like, she was a business law professor, and one of the things really I think I took from her was critical thinking, right? There are many other teachers that I don't even remember, right? So it wasn't really the position, it was the care about the relationship side that made her do that. And I think as a bad leader, it's really the same thing. Like, you have the position, people will remember you for maybe the things they don't want to remember you for, but you always have the opportunity to so okay, here's what comes to mind. When I started, when I was young, and I was working at a restaurant, and I got promoted to a supervisor. I think I was 19 or 17, 18. And there was a day where, I had the shift to myself, and there's other supervisors that are there, but I'm running the restaurant, like I'm the shift supervisor. And somebody said something, and because I had heard somebody else say that in the past, one other manager I used to work for, my response very aggressively was, you're here to do what I say you should do.
Ooh, you said that. That feels weird even coming out of your mouth. I don't know that, Ali. I don't know that
We
version.
model things, right?
Yeah. No,
I
totally.
saw somebody, so across the, I used to work at the mall, and across the hall there was another restaurant that had a part-time job at there too. I was working 2 jobs. And I really respected that manager that was there. And he was hardworking, he was a nice guy, he was charismatic, and I liked him. But he said that to somebody, like, hey, but he said it as a joke to somebody, as in, like, you're here to do what that guy says. That was one of the supervisors. And I took that literally. I modeled that. And in my next job where I was supervisor, I said that to one of the employees.
And then what happened?
Well, nothing happened. Obviously the employee didn't like it, and she threw a fit. But many years later, I remember the same restaurant I was working for the owner. He came to me and said, Ali, what's been impressive is people care about doing things even when you're not here because they don't want to disappoint you. And that's the highest level of leadership, when people care about you,
what they do in your absence.
Exactly.
Really. Yeah.
And then something clicked, right? Like, you can get things done. You got to listen to me because I said so right now. And as soon as you turn around, like, I don't want to listen to you. But when you have a respect for somebody, you don't want to let them down. You're doing it even when they're not looking. Now, which one is, even if you want to look at a short term or long term, do you want to micromanage everything all the time yourself? That's exhausting, right? So the moment you take your eyes off of it, it's going to fall apart. Versus, how can I build something where people want to do their best, whether I'm here or not? And that's not easy, but that's the journey I think we should strive to.
And they want to do their best, not because of fear of like what you're going to say, but because they want to support you in the mission and everything. I wonder if this bad boss of mine, because other than her being really, really smart, I can't tell you what she said to me that was really smart. I cannot tell you one concept. I could probably go back through old notebooks because I love to write things down. But I cannot tell you one thing she taught me. I just remember the feeling of always being kind of like enamored, like, wow, she's so smart. Like, I can really get a lot of intellect from her. But had she not told me to shut up, I don't know that she would be as significant in my life anymore. She'd be somebody I remember. But, like, again, I don't remember what she said. I remember working with her. I remember trips we took and whatnot. But I wonder if she would have as strong of an influence on me had she not hurt my feelings that bad, right? Yeah. And my gut is saying no. So it leads me, again, to like another old cliche. It's not like what you do or what you say to people. It's how you make them feel, and that's what sticks. And it sounds like I'm hearing that with you talking about your teacher, is like how this person made you feel. Probably, I don't know, I'm stabbing here, like empowered by teaching you how to be a critical thinker, or like think differently about critical thinking, and now you feel like you've come into your own power to have this new skill, right? So that's something you'll always remember that feeling of. So good leadership, you're right. I think it's the balance of like how to get the results and how to build the relationships to have long-term influence. And I'd like to think that we don't want to be remembered of like the Hitlers of the world, like he was a bad dude but he got a lot of people to do a lot of really bad things through influence. We want to be remembered as people who do it for the positive, right? And build $1 billion business and make people's dreams come true, right? Like that's the whole point of this thing, is to help other people achieve their goals through the business you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what comes to mind, like even Hitler, like he was a good leader, whatever you look at it. He just was an evil person, but it was going from the position you were in to taking over a country is not something everybody can do. So I think leadership is separate than your intention. Now, you might be an effective leader, but you still might not be a good leader for your people, right? You might be an effective leader for the bottom line, for getting the profit. And those are all short-term results. So you have to burn through people if you're doing it that way. I argue that the other side of that is more valuable, right? Like I don't need to just pay attention to short-term results. That's part of the equation. Business is in place for profit, right? So we need to make a profit. We need to care about the bottom line. We need to care about short-term results as well. However, everybody says, the best thing about us is our people, or we put people first. That sounds cliche, but if you really do that, meaning if you really make your people feel that, they will go to bat for you. They will not just do something for you, they will die for you. So the gentleman I mentioned that said, hey, Ali, so this is what came to my mind when you were talking. He said to me, hey, Ali, you have reached a level where people don't want to disappoint you, and that's great leadership. And I think he was actually trying to teach me how to do that rather than, right? So it was his way of like...
reverse psychologizing you a little bit.
Maybe some of that was there, but when I think about that guy, his way of leading was always positive enforcement, right? To a point that, like, behind closed doors, we could have a conversation about maybe what employees are not doing so well that might not even be here short term. And when that door would open, he would love everybody and care for everybody in a way that I'm like, we just talk about this person getting fired and you're talking about like this, that. How can you even emotionally get yourself to love this person this much? And he was just wired that way. Not just wired that way, because I believe that's a skill, right? That behind closed doors, we were both very direct, black and white. He was ex-military, so he had that militaristic style of leadership, but with so much love, right? And one thing he used to always say, Joe, shout out to you.
I was going to say, I knew, I started to figure out who you were talking about. I was going to say, is this Joe?
Yeah, and he would always say, Ali, you're carried on the shoulders of your people. if you care about what they want and help them achieve what they want, they will help you achieve whatever you want. So if you want to get to your business goals, first ask your people, what do they want out of life, out of this job, out of like, right? That was a conversation he was having all the time with everybody. He would remember everybody's short-term, long-term goals. He would remember everybody's birthdays. Valentine's Day, he would come with like flowers and chocolate for everybody. And no matter what, he was the one we respected and didn't want to disappoint, whether he was there or not. Like, the level of respect was always there for him.
He reached it seems like a level of permanence with his influence because of the way he made people feel. I don't think we have time today, but I want to like earmark this for a future conversation. Is that a skill that's learned, or is that something that's kind of innately in you? I think you can learn anything, because both of us have wild stories of us blubbering, flundering through like our first leadership, do the thing because I said so, and now we are totally completely opposite of that. So I think a lot of things can be learned, but like, I don't think that Joe didn't genuinely love the people, even if he was like, I love you as a person, but you're not a good worker for the business right now, like you're not hitting what you need to for the business. I still love you and care about you as a person. And I think that's something that is a little bit inside of you already. Now, maybe you have to learn to bring that up in a professional setting, because there's this like thought that like it has to be like black and white, like personal and professional, but like loving somebody taps into your personal side of your emotions. But how do you do that in a way that is professional and drives the business results that you want?
Yeah. This definitely, I would love to also earmark part of this for future conversation of a bigger discussion of nurture versus nurture.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But in this topic, there might be some people that naturally might be slightly better leaders. Just like there might be people that are naturally better basketball players, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a big difference between talent and skill as you go up the ranks, for example. So no matter what, where you sit naturally, someone with practice and skill will eventually surpass you. So the more important thing is what I'm willing to, like, being able to like adequately like look at your skill set without judgment, look at your inadequacies or your strengths and see where you are and work on what we can improve. So I might naturally be a more charismatic person. Therefore people like me, therefore I have more influence, and maybe I'm a better leader. However, there's a lot of skills that you can learn that will make you a more effective leader. And the person that practices these, puts them in place and studies these, will become a better leader over time. And I think another side of that is like, you might feel like, we all have the feeling that we have naturally. So I'm either a more results-oriented person or a more relationship-oriented person. So if you come to me and say, Emily, you asked me to do this thing last night. I'm so sorry I couldn't do it. The first thought that comes to my mind might be, well, you should have done it, or I wonder what happened. It's one of those two. Mm-hmm. So I'm more of a you should have done it person. However, that's just your natural instinct that might forever be there, but you can shrink that, like, oh, well, I should care about you and it might take me a minute to turn that switch on. You can shrink that to a millisecond of like going from natural instinct to like, there must be more. I should care about this person.
Well, usually our natural instinct comes from how we look at ourselves. So I think your natural instinct to say you should have done it is your workaholism, like kicking in, like just do the thing. But you're right. Like, okay, that's me. Now I'm talking to another human that doesn't execute, process, think, or prioritize the things in life the way I do, and that's okay. That's okay. So now I'm reacting to them and not reacting to myself.
That's a very good point, and I think below all of that surface, like naturally, I believe all humans, like we're all just loving creatures, right? Like, our soul is really there to love, right? So you're right. If I really go deeper, maybe there are layers that I can pull back, that I can more tap into those emotions than to just go to judgment immediately, right? So just bring that back is like, I believe we're going to talk about this nurture versus nature, but I think at the end of the day, the best thing someone can do is to, like, that question might come up, like, am I naturally good at this? Can I do this? And the faster we like say that doesn't matter, but let me look at how I can improve skill, brings you back to a belief that's important to have. By the way, these are things I'm hearing from other people say, and I'm like really ripping off and duplicating it. Which is, if the belief that's very important is believing that the human nature is through skill and repetition and through learning, I will improve. at anything, right? Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine, right? Meaning I can adapt as a leader, I can adapt as an athlete, I can adapt as being a better mother or father. There's skills that I can learn, right? Being a better person in a relationship, anything can be learned, right? So if I have that belief of like, oh, that's just the way it is, or that's not who I am, the faster I can say, well, I can improve that, I think the more time I would save and move towards my goal.
Wow, I feel like we opened a whole lot of stuff today. So I'm going to go ahead and call this. This is a first in a series of maybe some leadership discussions that we can do. I know we want to talk about nature versus nurture, skills versus like learned stuff over time. And so I have a lot to think about. My brain juices are just going a lot. So let's do some reflecting, and maybe next week we can talk about some nature versus nurture stuff and see.
Absolutely.
So that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. So I'll bring you some more stories maybe that you haven't heard yet of my own, I guess, nurturing myself, fail and learn. So, all right. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.
Until next time, get better every day.